Today on the show, I talk about some alternate universe AntMan. Hello and welcome to the show with issues. I'm Auram, and this week, Marvel's AntMan is finally being released to the world. Even though I've already seen it, I still thought I'd get into the spirit of things and talk about the little guy some of us know and love. That being said, let's get started. AntMan, the hero that no one really cares about, but Marvel made a movie about him anyway. Hey, I'm not complaining, it was awesome. Anyway, before I get started with the few AntMan that I prepared, I should explain who specifically I'm talking about here. The two main people to hold the AntMan mantle are Hank Pym and Scott Lang, so I'll be talking about some alternate versions of those two friendly fellas. Well, at least Scott's friendly. All of that being said, let's jump right in with our first AntMan, Henry Le Pym. Henry Le Pym of Earth 311, also known as the 1602 universe, was a brilliant scientist married to a girl named Jeanette. Unfortunately, at some point, Victor Octavius, a baron in France, captured Jeanette and began to experiment on her. Octavius forced Henry into curing him of his octopus-human hybrid form, and in return, he would return his wife to him. Pym banged his head against a wall for a while until a sickly Norman Osborn offered some of Peter Parquois' blood in exchange for a cure for himself. Pym accepted and was able to finish the elixir that could cure Victor. At this point, however, Octavius had been so deeply affected by his hybrid form that he went mad with power and revealed to Pym that he had continued his experiments on Jeanette. Octavius turned her into a wasp-human hybrid, and this pushed Pym over the edge, forcing him to take some of Peter's blood in an attempt to attack Octavius. Henry became a giant and immediately stomped on Octavius, effectively killing him and saving Jeanette. Henry and Jeanette reunited and retreated to one of his labs where they attempted to cure themselves. Interestingly enough, this Pym is never referred to as Giant Man or Ant-Man, but he's still definitely a Hank Pym. Next up is the Hank Pym of Earth 58163, also known as the House of M reality. Henry Jonathan Pym was a top scientist in his day. One day, his wife, Maria Travailla, was killed in a plane crash involving a Sentinel during the early days of the Mutant-Human War. Pym mourned for months until he was eventually contacted by the Tony Stark of this universe. Stark offered Pym a job, which he accepted. Tony put him on the Vision Project, and Pym also researched the Mutant X gene along with Dr. Hank McCoy. Later, Pym began to conduct illegal experiments on the mutant gene in secret. Nothing ever came of this since this reality came to an end following the events of House of M, but one can assume that Hank would have eventually turned himself into Ant-Man or Giant Man through the X gene research. Lastly on our ever-growing list of Hank Pyms is Henry Pym of Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe. Hank Pym was, once again, a brilliant scientist married to none other than Janet Van Dyne. He worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. and was assigned to the Super Soldier Project by Nick Fury. In his free time, he experimented on his wife's mutant blood and was able to turn himself into Giant Man, growing 59 feet and 11 inches tall at will. Things weren't all flowers and candy for Hank and Jan, however. Hank was extremely prone to domestic violence, and was honestly just kind of a jerk all around. All of this culminated after a loss against the Hulk and the continuing jealousy of Janet and Captain America's relationship. Hank started yelling at Jan, which eventually led to physical violence, putting her in the hospital. Pym went on the run, but was tracked down by Cap and beaten to a pulp. He was kicked off of the Ultimates, but was eventually reinstated into S.H.I.E.L.D. as a shrink for the supervillains in the prison. Around this time, he took up the Ant-Man mantle and created Ultron, along with a few other androids. Sometime later, he created an army of Ultron bots for a supervillain group known as the Liberators. He was sent back to prison because of this. Ultron eventually created a copy of the Ultimates, which attacked Tony Stark and Janet. Hank saved them and was reinstated as an Ultimate under the Yellow Jacket guys. In one final act of somewhat heroism, Hank sacrificed himself during Ultimatum in an attempt to save Janet's life. Speaking of the Ultimate Universe, the first on our list of Scott Langs is Scott Lang of the Ultimate Universe. Not much is known about Lang's early life except that he had a daughter, Cassie, at some point. He, along with his daughter, joined the Reserves as Giant Men. The Reserves was a superhero group created by S.H.I.E.L.D. around the same time as the Ultimates. It was basically a more militaristic approach to the team. Shortly after Ultimatum, he was inducted into the new Ultimates alongside Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, and the like. He fought with the team all the way up until the battle between them and the Avengers. He hasn't really been written about since then. I actually find this version of Scott really interesting because of the seeming lack of criminal history. It's not really mentioned anywhere and just shows that the character can exist without those mistakes being made. The last Ant-Man I've got for today is the Scott Lang of Earth 9907. Earth 9907 is the reality where the Red Skull won World War II. As a result of this, Victor Von Doom now rules the planet with a militaristic iron fist. Sound familiar? Anyway, the Scott Lang of this universe was a sadistic, psychotic madman who, at the request of Doom, murdered his daughter Cassie. After Doom took notice to this loyalty, he assigned him to the Thunder Guard as Pincer. He also worked with the Hank Pym of this universe, where he learned about Pym particles and gained the ability to alter his size. Later, after the Avengers of the MC2 universe visited this reality, he was defeated by Stinger, the Cassie Lang of that reality. I also just thought I should mention that he was trying to kill her when he was rightfully beaten. So, those are all the alternate universe Ant-Man I've got for today. Are there any really cool ones I missed? Probably not, there really aren't that many, but if I did, let me know in the comments. Whew. July is already halfway over. It feels like just yesterday I was losing sleep over the E3 conferences. Anyway, I'll be getting 7 titles, including Guardians of Nowhere #1, Planet Hulk #3, and Siege #1. So far, July has yielded some great new Secret Wars tie-ins, so I expect no less from this round. That being said, here's the rest of my pull list with Marvel and DC stuff. That's it for this week. Everyone, go see Ant-Man. It's really good. I'll probably see it around 3 more times with friends and family. For the record, I saw Age of Ultron 5 times in the theater. Anyway, thanks for watching. Next time I'm not dying in the studio. Seriously, I'm about to pass out. I need to go.